starting the sprouting wheat process. It takes 2 days. You soak your wheat for about 8 to 10 hours, and then you sprout it, and I'll show you how to do that as the process goes along. You sprout it, and then you dehydrate it. I dehydrate it. That's how I make sprouted wheat flour. I know there's a lot of recipes out there that you're supposed to blend up the wheat berries. You blend up the wheat pieces once they're sprouted and wet, but I like to dehydrate them and grind it into flour. So that's what we're going to start today. So what I use are these jars. They are gallon-sized jars. They work amazing for this. And I use a mixture of white and red wheat. I don't sprout as much red wheat as I do white because I use more white wheat in my bread than I do red. There's no measurement, rhyme or reason that you need. You just put as much as you think your dehydrator will handle, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, so what I do is I put whatever I need in there, and then I fill them with water. You want to keep them out of direct sunlight, so I will be moving them from the area that they are right now. So I fill it up. You want to make sure that it is all the way covered. I just fill the jar all the way full of water. During the summer, I like to cover the top so I don't get flies and stuff living in there. We have a awesome fly population here. It's pretty special. So we'll go ahead and fill both jars. I'll move them out of the direct sunlight, and then they sit for 8 to 10 hours. If you soak it for longer than that, they make a really gooey bread. Sprouted wheat has been a whole different animal to work with. You know, I finally found a whole wheat recipe that I loved, and then I switched over to sprouted grains, and it was a whole different creature. So it's been interesting to find a new way to get all that worked out. So, as you can see, I'm moving them back here, just kind of hiding them into the corner. And I have to set a timer because I will forget. I always forget. There's been a few times I've just fed the sprouts to the chickens because it's gone way longer than 10 hours. So, and it might be fine. I have never tried to make the bread out of sprouts that I've sprouted for that long. So, anyway, so there we go. We'll check in a little bit later. So it's been about 8.5 hours since I started soaking these grains. So what I'm going to do is strain them. So I've got some, just a minute, Sarah likes to eat them. They're very tasty after they've been soaked and sprouted. I wouldn't know, I don't eat them, but the kids, she sure likes them. So what I've done is I've cut some screen, just from a roll of screen that I bought at the hardware store. And then the elastic bands on the vegetables are really good to use. So I just elastic band the top. So I do that to both jars, or however many jars you're going to do at a time. So once I get that on, I just take the jar and I pour it into the sink. Kind of shake it around to make sure I get it all out. So then once I get that drained, fill it up with water, and you drain it again. Give it a good rinse, make sure you get all those berries rinsed off. The color, I watched a video on somebody saving the juices and using it to water plants or something. I'm sure there's a good use for it. It looks like it has some nutrients to it. I mean, there's a color as you drain the water off. So this, just make sure the elastic band's on, and then you set it on its side. I use a cake pan because who doesn't have cake pan? So you set it on its side, and I leave it to soak and sprout overnight. So, like I said, you do that to both jars, but you're supposed to come back 3 or 4 times throughout the evening and rinse and drain again. I started these late. It was around 11. And so right now it's almost 8 o'clock, so I'm probably only going to be able to rinse them once, maybe twice before I go to bed. I haven't seen a big difference in the nights that I've rinsed 3 or 4 times and the nights I've only been able to rinse once. So maybe there's a scientific reason that you need to rinse more, but I really don't know. That's just what I've done. So we'll let those sprout overnight. They sprout faster in the summer. Obviously it's warmer. So in the morning, we'll go ahead and show you where the sprouts are and the process from there. Okay, I am going to dehydrate my grains today. It has these cute little sprouts on them. You don't want the sprouts to get too big. You can see the tiny little tails that are starting to grow out of it. So I just make sure they just start with the little tails on it. And then you go ahead and give them a good rinse in the jars. One more rinse, let them drain. And then I put them into my dehydrator that I have here. I have actually two different dehydrators. It's the Nesco. They've got different trays on them. I, again, use the mesh. So what I do is, this was my red wheat. Not as much, but you can see that it is grown. There's more in there than when I started. And in the white wheat, I actually put too much in the jar. So you can see it's all the way up to the top. I don't like to have it so full because when it's sprouting, I like to have more oxygen that's able to kind of go through as it sits. But it's okay. Like I said, this is a tasty treat. My 3-year-old really likes to just eat them as is, nice and soft. Sometimes when I have allowed the sprouts to go too far, I've just fed them to the chickens and they think that's pretty fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and start pouring them onto the trays. I at one point had a dehydrator that didn't have a fan in it. It was just one I borrowed from my mom. And it didn't work. The grains just kept growing, the sprouts kept growing, so it was kind of a bust and took a long time. So I've really been happy with this one. You don't want to layer your sprouts too thick or they won't dehydrate correctly. I have read you can do it in your oven, but it's harder, and in the summertime I don't like to heat up my house unless I have to. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill up my trays. Why do I sprout flour? Why don't I just do 100% whole wheat flour? That's been a journey. So what I understand, which is I'm not an expert by any means, but from what I understand is your body digests it better. When you sprout, you begin the digestion process before you even eat it, and so it makes it easier to digest. I'd heard somebody say it makes it, your body treats it more like a vegetable than a flour, so it's just better for you. It's easier on your digestion, to absorb where it's already started to sprout. So that is why I do it. I used to buy sprouted wheat bread all the time. And then I started making whole wheat bread without doing without sprouting. And then I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. It's an autoimmune disease, and had to cut gluten completely out of my diet. And so in researching, I thought, well, I make my own bread. I should be able to handle that. But in that research, and I had remembered from some previous years' research that if you're going to eat wheat, it should be sprouted. It's just easier on the body to digest and to handle. So that is why we started eating sprouted. Well, I don't, but the kids do. They eat the sprouted wheat grains bread. I wanted a bread recipe that didn't call for all kinds of extra things. I wanted just whole wheat. I didn't want to add gluten to it. I didn't want to add dough enhancers, and I just wanted a simple recipe for bread. So I just kept looking. I found an amazing whole wheat recipe on Pinterest, and it was great. But then I decided to start sprouting. So I did the recipe straight across the same, and it was just, the dough was so gooey. It was really, really interesting. So from that first recipe, I adapted it to my sprouted wheat recipe that I use now. And I did put that recipe in the description of my video that we did make the So if anybody's interested in that, it is there. I mean, make it your own. Add more, add less, do whatever you think. And let me know if there's something that works better. So it's my labor of love to make bread for my family. I can't eat it, and we've got our Missy, who's 9. She can't eat it either. She doesn't tolerate the gluten either. So we find some yummy alternatives. Today we made some snickerdoodle cookies out of cassava flour, and those were so good. So it's fun to be able to make different options. There's also a flatbread that we make that's delicious. I just don't like to bake, so it's a struggle for me, but you gotta eat. I'll sprout for the chickens too. I'll fill sunflower seeds up, cover them with water, keep the lid on for a couple of days, and then turn it on its side and sprout like I did these grains. The sunflower seeds tend to go moldy really fast, so you want to keep the water filtering. You want to keep, not filtering, you want to keep the water moving, rinsing them out. That way you don't have moldy food. You don't want to be feeding your chickens mold. Anyway, so I like to get the grains on here as evenly as possible. And then I just turn on the dehydrators, and it goes all day. I grind my own wheat here at home. You have to be really careful to make sure that the grains, the wheat berries, are completely dry. Otherwise you'll gum up your grinder. So I'll just let it go all day, and then I'll just get it out and stick my nail in it to see how hard or soft the wheat berry is. And there you go. We have sprouted wheat berries ready for dehydration, so we can put them in bread. You can see their cute little tails. And like I said, you could probably let it go a little bit longer. I'm just super nervous to mess with the recipe that I have perfected. So, I don't know, maybe one of these days I'll get brave and let them sprout a little bit longer, and then see if it works out the same. I mean, I can only imagine the longer it sprouts, the better it would be for you.